Welcome to the Prosthetics and Orthotics podcast with Brent Wright and Joris. Hi everyone, my name is Joris, and this is another episode of the Orthotics and Prosthetics podcast with myself and Brent Wright.
Hey
Welcome,
Joris,
Brent.
it's good to be here, and super excited about the guest today. We've got Dennis Richards.
Okay.
And he was a very early adopter to multi-jet fusion technology, specifically for orthotic devices. And so I can't wait to hear a little bit more about his journey. He has his own multi-jet fusion 580 color machine, and he does some incredible devices, not only the design of them, but also the coloring, which is just a whole nother aspect of the art of what Dennis does. So I'm really excited about kind of digging in and seeing what he's up to.
Okay, cool. Sounds great. Welcome, Dennis.
Hey guys, I'm really excited to be here with you guys. I love talking 3D printing, so I'd love to share my knowledge. First of all, I've been in this O&P for since 2003, so it's been a long journey to get where I am with the whole 3D printing process, and going from traditional to digital has been a fun ride so far, and looking forward to where this journey goes, actually. So
okay, and you specialize in orthotics, right?
That's correct. Yes.
And what made you? Because everybody we've talked to so far is kind of a bit of both, or is more on the prosthetics end. What made you say, you know what, orthotics is the place for me?
It was so I'm certified orthotist, and so that's what I do. I just felt like early on I just saw the opportunity with being able to do something better than what was traditionally out there as far as graphics and just design in general. So when I first was exposed to 3D printing several years ago, I just the light bulb came on, and I knew I had to get there because the way that you could design and print and manufacture these devices, I just knew that it had to be where my company was going to ultimately end up. So, and here we are.
Okay. And what was his light bulb moment? When did you really realize how powerful 3D printing can be?
Yeah. So, actually when I was in school at Northwestern at the Rehab Institute, seeing a 3D printed socket, and it was just really the amazement of that, going from a computer design to the actual model without, just without the labor and just that in general. That's where I was really fascinated. But once 3D printing started to progress and gain momentum, I'd say around, for me, in about 2014, and I was seeing what people were doing at home with their 3D printers. And I was, and really what the patients were wanting. It was, you'd see things on YouTube or, just social media, just what they were printing for themselves. And it was far from what we were creating for them. I mean, we're doing great work, don't get me wrong, but that's what really, I guess, clicked for me, because I knew with the right technology that we could take what we do now and just take it to a whole nother level.
Okay. And how did you get started with it? Because there's one thing, like kind of like saying, okay, this is interesting. How did you learn about it? Because that's kind of really informal nowadays, right? It's like really
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that so for me, it was I just bought a scanner. I got the first edition of the structure scanner, and I bought that with the iPad, and I actually the first app that went with that, I believe it was either It Sees 3D. There was just a real basic app that you could scan images, and I just started playing around with that, just trying to scan actually, because that's a little bit tricky in itself. And so my first the first thing I scanned and printed, my daughter dressed up in a Halloween costume, and I had been practicing a little bit, so I decided to scan her in her costume, and then I actually 3D printed her in a keychain size with their costume. It wasn't color at the time. It was just, it was just one color. It was just white. But that was my first experience of actually doing that, scanning, and then getting this model of her in a keychain. I gave it to her. She still has it. That was, to me, I was sold. I was all in at that point. I just had to figure it out from there, So that was it.
Yeah, but of course, going from like a scan to a 3D print is not as easy, maybe as 1, 2, 3. Let's say, so it doesn't really always work, right?
That's right. That was just the being able to have an actual file that's 3D printable. I mean, so that's you had to figure out. I had no experience with CAD at that point. I've had just very basic knowledge of it, and so then it was just getting on YouTube, trying to do research. It's a lot of trial and error. I was using a printing service at the time when I was there was a couple of them that I used, and it was just sending them the file and then seeing if it was good enough, and then I'd try some software to fix it. But yeah, you're right. It was challenging. So it was just me going after it. I had really nobody just other than my children, who at the time were my son was a teenager. He could help me out a little bit. He he was way more advanced than me with those with the software and 3D printing at the time. So but then just moving forward, trying to find courses at our just at our, even with our industry, learning some of the digital software out there. It just took time.
I was just wondering, Dennis, on the software side of things, what software did you start with? Like, what were some of the software packages or softwares that you used to try to get your product?
Yeah, so it was the very first one I used. It was I believe it was really basic. It was and I'm trying to think of the name of it. It was prior to 3D Builder, which is it's a free. If nobody out there has used 3D Builder, I would recommend trying that. It's user friendly. It's easy to build 3D printable designs, whatever it is. And but I think it was I can't. But anyway, so 3D Builder was one of the early ones. So it was real basic, and then moving them. Taking it from there, trying other software. So yeah, it started with those real basic free ones that you could find online.
Okay. And you mentioned YouTube and stuff. Was there anybody or any kind of resource that was really there, or was it really kind of a solitary journey for you to find this all out?
It really was. It was, me just going to some of the meetings. I remember that's how I met Brent, was at the Academy meeting. I think 2018 or something. We were down. He was doing a talk on 3D printing, and that's where I met him. And prior to that, had already been, exposed to multi-jet fusion, and but by that point, it was just me trying to search out whoever knew anything about it. And so yeah, it was a pretty it was a solo journey up until that point. And then once I was able to start networking, and it really came down to me figuring out what I could do. And I wanted to basically find just other sources, other people in our industry that were actually 3D printing or even just digital. So and early on, there really wasn't anybody.
And when did you start using it actually for business, like actually for clients? How long did that take from when you first got in touch with the technology?
So from 2014, my first I'd say test AFO was in 2019, in the spring of 2019. So that was with MJF.
Okay. And that's an ankle foot orthosis, right?
Yes, that's
proud
correct.
of that. I actually know that.
Yes. Yeah. Ankle foot orthosis.
And why did you end up with MJF? Because I just noticed that a lot of people in this area, or disproportionate amount of people are using MJF, right?
Yeah. From what I find, and I've got a couple boxes of old parts and test pieces. I went through the entire lineup of whatever manufacturer or 3D printing company was, they would claim that that would have the durability for end use. I would send a file, test it out on myself. Actually, I've got, multiple AFO designs that I would try. And then we also, eventually we ended up having some patients that were willing to try stuff for us, and we were, we just make it, and there was no charge. And so, but it was MJF actually, it had the ability to withstand, and I'm comparing that to SLS. Those were the two main printing technologies that were strong enough, and the feel, for whatever reason, the MJF just had a better feel to it. And so, at the end of the day, we just had to make a decision on, what direction we were going to go. And then we also have to factor in, the cost of the machines and, just the technology itself, where I thought it was where it was going. And so that's just, that was our preference. And actually, I think it was a good decision at this point. I think we're having really amazing success with our 3D printing, and the body of work that I have now, it just keeps growing. So everything from, I've tried just about every orthotic device you can think of.
Okay. But then still, it's a big step to buy MJF machine. They're kind of pricey, right? They're not like, it was a big step for you, right?
It was a big jump. It was going from how, once the 580 was released, and we were able to get some trials with the 580, the parts, I was sold because of the ability to apply my artwork, the graphics that I do, to the print itself. And so it was pricey, and I get that question quite a bit, from other business owners, and how do you justify the cost of something like that? And that's a whole nother story, but really it just made sense for what my business model is. It's not for everybody, but it was a jump, but at the end of the day, it's working for us.
How often do you use it right now? What's the kind of volume of parts you make on the machine?
So we'll run our printer at least twice a week, right, at the moment, and it varies. But to run these builds, you want to have enough parts and the right parts to fit into the build, because I can you can print multiple devices at the same time, but it has to be nested into this build to where the parts fit in just right at the right orientation. So, but running it, so, we're running, probably in the machine, probably, you could go from maybe 6 to 8 AFOs per week in that, is kind of where we're at right now.
Dennis, on the cost side of things, when they ask you about the comparison between the traditional cost versus the 3D printed costs, and I know this is not taking into consideration the cost of the machine, where do you feel like you're at? Obviously, it works for your rhythm, but do you feel like 3D printing also saves you cost as well?
Yeah, for me it does, and I'll. Let me kind of put this in perspective. So I'm a small company, and so the technical side, everything is done, as far as the design itself. So I don't have to have the technicians, that labor force is, it's not as, because it's all the skill side is done in the CAD. So you're not having somebody have to cut off the AFO and draw trim lines, modify the cast. So I guess on the labor side of things, that's where you would make up the cost basically on the payment and the material cost of the printer. That's the best way I can describe it. But again, it works for me. I can with this 3D printer and this technology, my designs, there are things that you just can't do with traditional. So that, to me, that's something you really can't put a price on, because you look at what I'm doing, and then for me personally, it's like I can't do it any other way. It has to be done in CAD, and when you see my devices, they're more what people would say. These look really engineered, and they are really. But so that makes a difference for me. That's worth the cost. I wouldn't tell anybody that it's going to save them cost, because I really don't. Everyone's business model is different. So it just makes sense for me. But I think if you're looking at where the cost savings are, it's definitely, from a business standpoint, it's the labor cost.
Okay. But then still running the machine twice a week, I mean, it seems like you're not really making optimal use of it. Have you thought of like outsourcing to other people or stuff like that? Or is that's not...
Yeah, Joris, that's sort of, so with the multi-jet, there's a post-processing side of it, which that's where the labor is. I mean, it's not that bad, but what I've been waiting for is to have this. I ordered a vapor smoother, which that process alone, the finished process on that, it means everything. I mean, really, when you're using these 3D printed, like whether it's the 580 or the 5200, to have the parts vapor smooth and to be able to do that in house, that's what I've been waiting for. So I've got a number of different businesses that are just kind of waiting for me to have this AMT vapor smoother installed, which is actually happening right now. And I ordered it a year ago, and it just has taken this long because of the supply chain issues and all of that. So yeah, that's definitely in my business plan, and that's kind of where I'm at. I'd like to run it every day if possible. So but yeah, that's where we are right now.
Yeah, just a vapor smoother. So the vapor smoothing is a technology or there's a bunch of different ones, essentially under, there's a solvent, and that solvent is turned into a gas, and the gas goes around all the 3D printed parts and smooths out the texture, closes the surface texture to a certain extent, and makes sure that the part is more, what we would call consumer friendly, but also a little bit less permeable to water and a little bit better looking generally as well. And and it also saves a lot of labor, and also lets people increase repeatability. So the chance of you making mistakes is less. So then you can make like 1,000 or something a lot better as well. So that's essentially what vapor smoothing is. And AMT is one of the companies selling a vapor smoothing technology, or they have their own specific solvent and process. It's interesting, by the way, that's also an additional investment. Is the reason why you picked AMT because there's a couple other options out there, Dimension and other stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, it was really just testing, and for the color, the multi-jet, the 580 parts, the ones that I tested, the finish is exactly what I was looking for. So I prefer my artwork and my graphics are all multicolor. I rarely do anything solid color, and it just, the 580 lends itself well to doing these amazing graphics. So and just like Brent was saying earlier, we spend a considerable amount of time to actually, for any of our patients, we'll actually do renderings of different graphics that they, as we're designing it for them, they'll send us artwork, whether it was a tattoo that they had or wanted, we can play around with that. We design, we use multiple Adobe Photoshop, for instance, and we're constantly, we have, a team that's just working on graphics. So to take those multicolor graphics, wrap them to the actual device, and then the vapor smoothing, it's night and day from what the process we have right now. Currently, we do use an epoxy, and it just works. It's pretty amazing. I'm pretty excited about that technology, and getting out, doing more for not just O&P, but the way the technology, these end use parts, from whether it's automotive to whatever industry, I've had other companies reach out, and people are interested. That's for sure, because they can do short runs, and we can help them with the graphics and the design. So that's a whole nother area that we're looking forward to as well.
So the graphics thing, you brought it up a couple of times. That seems to be really important to you. I mean, is it important to customers as well? Is it about making this thing yours, or is it about like dealing with this somehow, or what's the deal for customers?
It really, it's making it. George, I would say it's making it their own. They have some of these, the pediatric population or the adults, they have an opportunity. And I think traditional, being able to offer, certain designs with the traditional technology, having an option between, hey, I don't want just white plastic. I can get these transfers, and that's good. But we really do take it to another level because we can do, and it makes it their own. We ask them, we sit down with them and say, hey, what, if you could, what would make this your own? If you could make any brace design or anything on your brace, let's write it down. Let's sketch it out. And then whether it's adult or pediatric patient. And then once the experience, it's like a reveal to them. So they'll come in and then we'll bring them out, and it's just an amazing experience. And I really believe that is what our patients are looking for. They see what's going on. They see what the technology that's out there, and they're excited about 3D printing. And I think that at the end of the day, we're just getting them there. We're making it their own. And really with, I guess, pediatrics more, but compliance with orthoses, that's one of our biggest, challenges for acceptance of the device. So when they have a part in that process, it just, it's absolutely amazing, Joris. I mean, that's the best way I can say it. Once you experience that, we just take it to the next level.
Okay, but so does that mean? But is it like, okay? So I like this process where you're really literally sitting down with someone saying like, "What do you want?" Right, and kind of, because I think they're not in control, right? Up until this, there's an accident or something happened, and all of a sudden they have to go through a whole bunch of different doctors and professionals and all this stuff, and they're never really in control. They might get like a choice of like A or B, but they don't understand this, and all of a sudden you're putting them in control. So that, I think that could be very powerful.
It's powerful. Absolutely. It's empowering. The reactions and the response from just whether it's their peers at school or even, for the adult population, for them to walk around with, I would just use an example. One of our patients had his own company prior to that, had his own artwork, and we're able to, take that and wrap it around and do a design with that on there. And it meant everything to him he wanted to get back to that after having a stroke. So, but yeah, absolutely powerful.
And what are the kind of things people want? I mean, is it sports teams, or is it a little bit more personal than that, or?
It's more personal for the most part. Every once in a while we'll get somebody that wants sports, but they want like cyborg images possibly, or maybe dinosaurs, or whatever their interests are. And it may just be, so in some cases it's just butterflies, or it's, certain colors, or maybe I've had a certain artwork, maybe a Monet painting, or just different things that are out there that they can find. And we stay away from trademarked, characters and different things, but we can do similar. We can really, the artwork that we do, we can do profiles of different characters, and just so that they know what it is. That's really it. And I just had I mentioned tattoo work. A patient of mine, a spinal cord injury. He's a tattoo guy. He actually designs tattoos, and so really doing some fun stuff with him. I'll get that posted on my LinkedIn when we're finished. But more like a cyborg, a tattoo kind of, getting, it's really pretty amazing. So we do spend a lot of time with that, and it's not something that is reimbursable on our end, but that's what makes the difference. For us, for the patients.
Do you think it really helps people kind of like, I don't know, maybe psychologically heal, or makes them feel a bit prouder of this thing, or makes it feel like it's part of their life? What's the deal here? What's the specific?
I really think it's the acceptance and making it, they really feel like it's part of them. It's an extension of what they like. And I mean, you see it a lot with prosthetics already, but in the orthotic world, it's we can take it to 3 dimensions. So, if I wanted to, just to be able to see it and feel it, that 3-dimensional feel on the back of the AFO, let's say, in different colors and different, that so it's an extension of their personality, and it makes them, like I said, psychologically, it maybe not look at it and try to hide it as much. Maybe they'd be more willing to show it to people, and they're pretty actually proud of it in some cases.
Yeah, I think that would be really, really, very positive compared to like before. I mean, I think all these, with these flesh themed and all these things that were just like a little bit plasticky, flesh looking, and all this. That always looked a bit kind of off, and that, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's definitely a trend towards that, and I was able to, a few years back, we with a university here locally, we actually put a team together, and actually there was a team. They asked me to be part of it because they knew I was 3D printing, and they wanted to just see, was it feasible? What could we do with getting a group of engineers and physicians on board? And we just kind of brainstorming it, and that's really, at the end of the day, it was like, okay, maybe it's not going to be less expensive. We'll just put that out there. So let's just say it's the same cost on the payer's end, on our end, but we can do something for compliance and have this level actually change their lives. So that's where, so if you looked at this, at the end of the day, after a couple of years going through this process, but that reaction, the acceptance, that's where the real benefits are.
And what's your process? I mean, let's say you get referred a patient, or do they come in because they know you? What happens?
So yeah, I've been in this business, so they're referred at this point for the most part, and then, and we get a number of patients that come in that see what we're doing, and hear it's sort of like a word of mouth, and they say, oh, hey. I'll give you an example. A little girl that we did a really cool theme, was pretty amazing theme. It was like a dolphin character. She actually was at school, and another child there with special needs saw those and saw how amazing they were and how much she loved them. And then so they ended up coming here, and I was able to do a design for them. So as that starts to spread, it just raises the bar for and what we can do, and what the patients can, what's out there for them. And they're definitely seeking me out on those cases. But we do the whole, from pediatrics to adults. So the adults, it's not that much of it's a big deal to them, but not like the pediatric population.
And what happens? Like when somebody gets referred to you, walk us through the entire process. Like if I walk in, and how do I actually walk out with my AFO?
Yeah. Yes. So we get in, we'll sit down, patient, we'll talk about their previous history, just do a basic assessment on, what they've had, their diagnosis, and then we'll just talk about what they want. Just kind of get a feel for that. And then, from that point, we'll go ahead and I still take a mold, fiberglass cast mold for the most part. And then we'll take that mold, and then we'll actually take our 3D scanner, scan the mold. And with one thing about taking molds and then 3D scanning them, you get really good at taking these molds because they have to be they have to be uniform wrapped, and they have to be in a really good position, and everything has to be really defined. So we've come up with, over the years, we've really perfected our casting and our, that whole side of it, so we could get a better scan, which then gives us a better model to design the actual AFO or whatever we're doing. And so that process, in that process, sometimes we'll talk about the design. So as I'm going through that, and usually this all happens within a couple of weeks, and then we'll tell them, you guys think about the design, because that doesn't happen usually on the first visit. We'll go back and forth with text or email about the graphics. So as they're trying to narrow down exactly what they want, maybe finding some images online, and they'll send them to us, and then we'll start to have the team put together some of these graphics. And then once I have the CAD finished, you got several hours involved in this. I mean, there's definitely work involved. So once the AFO, let's just say it's an AFO, once the AFO CAD is completed, then we'll start to wrap them with different graphics, and then we'll have a screenshot of that, and we'll email or text the patient, hey, which one of these, is this where we're going? You like this? And then usually we'll narrow it down, and then once we get it okay from them, we'll go ahead and move forward with the 3D printing, and then we'll go through the processing steps, and then once we get it all put together and they come back in, that's the special day, and we'll have, usually there'll be multiple members of their family, because this is something they spent a lot of time on. There's this anticipation of the reveal, and everybody's really excited to see it, the final product. And so once they see it, it's usually, there's so much excitement, and it's just an amazing experience. And I want that for all my patients. It's really, really neat. So, but then they get the AFO, and then, we test it just like we would normally do, and have them do make sure the fitting goes well, no issues. And then we have them come back and, for follow up in a couple of weeks to make sure everything's good, whether it's, whatever device it is. It's usually a pretty amazing process. A lot of photos are taken. We try to, I've got a huge body of work, and I was really good at posting things on LinkedIn, and I've slacked off a little bit here lately, but it's just because I've got so many designs going, and so many things. It's all building up. So I got a lot to put out there again.
And just from the printing part, you have a design you make in Photoshop, that you wrap that somehow. How does the printing part work?
Yeah. So whatever design whatever we come up with, we'll pull it into our software. We'll use a couple different software. So Adobe Photoshop's one, but then the wrapping there's two different ways you can use what they call UV wrapping, which it'll wrap the graphics from 2D into 3D without distorting the image. So we're doing some of that now, but then also we can use let's just say example, the real simple software I was telling you about, 3D Builder. We can take those graphics and wrap them in there. But there's a certain technique that you have to do. Basically, you want to make sure that it's not too distorted. So you have to be careful. Sometimes we'll use different backgrounds that don't distort, because if you isolate the image, and then you have there's just different ways, techniques to do it, because you want it to look right. You don't want it to look too distorted. So there's those two different techniques that we do. I do actually for the adults, I do a lot of carbon fiber graphics, because it seems like people like that. There's a number of patients that aren't really too interested in, the adult populations. There's, so carbon fiber, we have different color carbon fiber graphics that we do that actually turn out really nice. And with the 3D printing process, because the images are printed at the same, everything's printed on and that's the biggest, when I do these AFOs and I show people, the biggest question, the most often question is they'll say, how did you get the graphics on there? You 3D printed it, but how did you get the graphics on there? And I tell them it's 3D printed, and people, that's a concept that's very tough for people to understand. And usually say, well, did you hydro dip it? But because it looks amazing, and but that's really the process, and the design. It's years of practicing with these softwares to get it to look right. And there's really not, when it comes to the software, that is the biggest. I would say making the time and finding the time to figure these processes out. That's our biggest challenge. Even for me to be a busy practitioner, I do, call in a number of facilities. So I'm out of the office. I'm not here all the time. So to find ways to learn new technology, to learn new software, that's a pretty big challenge for us. But that's sort of how we wrap, the graphic side of it. We're just tapping into that. What our printer can print and what we can do, our limits are the figuring out the software, because it's trying to put a 3D model or image onto a organic structure, a surface. It's very challenging, and there's a lot to hopefully the software gets easier and more accessible, but right now we're still trying to figure it out. But we definitely have a long way to go, and we're just tapping into the potential of it at this point.
So on your AFOs and such, what is the longevity? Are you finding that it's very similar to traditional fabrication, better than traditional fabrication? And you mentioned like being able to tune the dynamics. Can you let us know a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I would say for what we're creating, the fact that we can do versus thermal forming, the fact that we can do variable thicknesses, I feel like the designs are superior to that, because with the PA12, you still get this. The part can still be heated. It can be you can relieve areas, so it has those properties. But I feel like from what I've seen over the last few years, these are as durable as you could want. If we're comparing it to a laminated AFO, I would say it's in certain cases it's just as good, but the strength obviously is not as strong. So there are cases where I'm going to opt to do a laminated AFO when it's necessary, and then there may be a case where I feel like I need a little bit softer, a little bit more flexibility, and I may lean towards thermoplastic. So, you just got to be very selective on whatever technology you're using. But I would say for the general AFO, Brent, that I would say over the last few years, I think it's more durable. But again, you've got to, that doesn't. I'm not saying that without trial and error and having some failures early on to really figure out the CAD part of it and the thicknesses where it needs to be thick and the reinforcements and all that. So, but yeah, so that's kind of the spectrum. So that's, I think for right now, amazing outcomes and durability.
Okay. And if we're looking at this, I mean, is there any key software you use? I mean, we're going from you have to clean up the scan. You then have to make do you use things like Magix and GeoMagic or stuff like that, or are you using other things?
Actually, no. I'm looking. Been playing around with Freeform recently, so having the time to learn these programs, I have the structure scanner for the most part. I started with Design Studio. I still use that to modify, and then I use also a program called Cube, and that's more of a to be able to take the 3D. It's designed for 3D printed parts, so I can use some tools in there to do maybe some to repair the files, to smooth the files, to change the shape, and also to blend, and also to perform like aerations and perforations and whatever, and texture mapping. So those two softwares, and then Freeform, from what I've seen, if I could find the time to learn that, I could take my designs to even another level. So, but for right now, and then I use 3D Builder also. That's one of my go-tos. It's free. So I can, and what's nice about that is that it writes, you can create 3MF, which is a file that's used with the 3D printer. So you can take an STL, pull it into Builder, and it creates a really clean 3MF file ready to be 3D printed. And so I use that one to create the final file to send to the printer at the moment. But there's a lot of softwares out there, and it's just like I said, it's finding the time and finding somebody there's just really no training. There's really not much training out there as far as specifically for O&P with our just with our field in general. I think that there's a huge need for that, and I think that would maybe down the road when there's more acceptance, more adopters of 3D printing, maybe we'll end up with more places that these practitioners can be trained. So, but yeah, it's for me just playing around, trying new software, and finding the time to do it at this point.
It's so strange to me that no one has just come up with something that takes a scan, wraps a graphic around it. You know what I mean? There's like an automated kind of workflow for this, you know?
I couldn't agree more. In fact, we were just talking about that. So my daughter, she works with me in the summer. She's in high school, and she's pretty good playing around with the different software, and the steps that it takes to take a graphic and unwrap this and rewrap it. It's not straightforward at all. So, the average person in our field it's a challenge just to figure that out alone. So, but I can see there's definitely the software is getting better. Let's say that. And I think, we're just so early on still. If you look at the evolution here, I mean, it's an exciting time. I couldn't be more excited. I come in every day I'm always designing something and trying something new. I spend a lot of time in my own shop doing R&D. I've come up with some really cool stuff. And, but my limitations really are, learning the software and then finding people to work with me that understand it as what we're doing on the O&P side, and then trying to transfer their knowledge to what we do and learning what the other CAD side. It's our mix is so unique. It lends itself well to 3D printing, but to get to that part and get what we want, it's definitely a challenge.
Well, Dennis, thank you so much for your story. I think it's really great. It's really a fantastic tale, and I love that these graphics really, really make sense for patients. It really seems like a really, really wonderful thing. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
And thank you, Brent, for being here as well today.
And hearing just the passion for patients and how he's using the graphics and the 3D printing to enrich people's lives is pretty inspiring.
Could not agree more. And thank you very much for listening. This is another episode of the Orthotics and Prosthetics podcast. And thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.